Hey guys, my name's David, and today I'm going to be installing a cargo carrier onto the back of my Keystone Springdale travel trailer that has a 4-inch tubular steel bumper on the back. And before I did this installation, actually just yesterday, I installed some bumper supports onto my bumper that drilled and mounted into the steel I-beam frame of my travel trailer to help support that bumper, because these just really are not designed to carry any more weight than the spare tire that is mounted on the back from the factory. And so since I'm going to be putting my electric bicycles, you can see I've got them right there, I have 2 of those that I'm going to be putting onto the cargo carrier. I needed to, support that steel bumper because it is just made out of very thin-walled steel, and it would have some very big issues carrying the nearly 200 pounds that I'm going to be mounting on it with the cargo carrier and the 2 electric bikes combined. So before you do anything like this, or before you, put a hitch or any type of thing that might be hanging off of that tubular steel bumper, you're definitely going to want to put some support brackets on it first. And so go ahead and check that video out first, and get yourself some bumper supports. Go ahead and put a link right there, as well as down in the video description below to that video, so you can see how that installation is done also. I'll also put a link down in the video description to the cargo carrier that I am installing onto my bumper. I got it from eTrailer.com. We're not affiliated with them. This isn't sponsored by them at all. It's just the cargo carrier that I found that would work best for our application, and they do actually have multiple sizes. I believe they're all the same depth, but their widths change, and so if you only need a little bit of extra storage, you can get something that's smaller and lighter. But if you need a lot, I think they've got one that's up to 84 inches wide, so you can put some serious cargo on the back of your travel trailer, which is really good for people with travel trailers, because there's not a whole lot of storage in the storage bays and the pass-throughs like there are on some of the bigger fifth wheels, and especially on Class A's. And the reason that we're doing this cargo carrier on the back is because right now we're carrying our electric bikes in the back of our truck, and they just take up so much room and just dominate the storage in our truck bed under our camper shell. And so it's going to be really nice getting those out somewhere where they're a lot easier to access also. But let's get to the install. Here's what the whole kit looks like laid out on the ground. I've got my dog Sweetie and my wife Ro to supervise on this job. For me, the first step is removing the spare tire from the bumper. And to get that off, I just need to remove 4 nuts that are holding on these 2 U-shaped clamps. If these nuts are rusted and hard to turn, just use some penetrating lube on them and they should remove pretty easily. But once those nuts are off, you can just lift the spare tire off and set it aside. Next, place the mounting brackets onto the bumper, and then using long screws, place those through that will clamp down the cargo carrier to your rear bumper. Now the instructions say to place these brackets exactly 27 9/16 of an inch apart, but the exact distance between them right now doesn't really matter, as we will dial that in when we tie these 2 brackets together with the rest of the parts of this kit. Next, we can mount one of the main support arms onto one of these bumper brackets, and then there's a pin that slides through this support arm and the mounting bracket that will keep the arm down, but if you remove it, it will allow the arm to pivot up. And this is what this main arm assembly should look like at this point. Now my other main support arm has this large bump in it from welding where the other bolt goes through, and so to get the mounting bolt in and through this hole, I had to use a little bit of persuasion with a small crack hammer. And then we can go ahead and tighten the nut down to secure the support arm to the mounting bracket. You don't want to tighten it down too much, as it won't allow this arm to pivot up and down, but you want to get it just tight enough to where it doesn't clamp down on it. And then unfortunately, the holes for this pin didn't quite line up either, so I had to persuade that through with the crack hammer as well. And then we can start to assemble the basket halves together. There's a connector bar that slides inside of both sides of the basket, and that connector bar has threaded holes placed through it that you thread bolts through, which will then connect these two halves together. I made sure to leave these bolts and nuts that I placed on loose because right after this step we're going to be placing more bolts into the center section of these baskets to connect those areas together as well, and I just wanted everything to be loose while I was placing all of the bolts on, just to make sure that all of the bolts went through each hole easily. There are 3 longer bolts then that go through horizontally to connect both of these basket halves together. Once all of the bolts are placed through the holes and the nuts are started, then we can go ahead and go one by one and tighten down all of these nuts. The walls of the tubes that make up these basket halves aren't very thick, and so you don't really want to bear down on these bolts and nuts, because then you'll sort of start to cave in the steel walls of these tubes, and you don't really need to make them that tight anyway because they're not really going to be carrying a load. They're just holding these basket halves together. And then we can go ahead and place the basket onto these main support arms. There are 2 long carriage bolts that go into the top part of the basket and then through the support arms to mount them to it. And then with all 4 of those carriage bolts in place and the nuts started on them, I rotated the assembly up to make it easier to access those to tighten them down. It's at this point that the assembly is all tied together that I went ahead and measured to make sure that it was in the exact center of my bumper. And once it was in place, I went ahead and fully tightened down the bolts on the mounting brackets to clamp it tightly to my bumper. I purchased separately this rubber mat, it did not come with the kit, to give a nice protective flooring of this cargo carrier to protect both the carrier and the contents that I'm going to be carrying inside of it, and I cut it to size very easily with a Stanley knife. At this point, the assembly of the cargo carrier is completely finished, but I wanted to go ahead and lift up and place my folding electric bikes onto the cargo carrier so that I could finalize actually storing them on this cargo carrier. You know, that's the whole point of that, is to get these bikes out of the bed of my truck and onto this cargo carrier, and oh, they just fit perfectly on this thing. It was almost like it was meant for these electric bikes. I'm eventually going to buy some nice, thick, heavy-duty chain to secure the bikes, not just to the cargo carrier, but to the bumper of my travel trailer to make theft very difficult. To protect my electric bikes from rain and sun, I purchased these waterproof grill covers, and they ended up fitting over the electric bikes very, very well. I was very satisfied with them and their quality and thickness. It's actually a recommendation by Lectric bikes to just get some grill covers if you want to protect them from the elements. And then it was time to strap them down. I also purchased 4 ratchet straps that will hook to either side of the cargo carrier and go around the electric bikes to fully secure them to the back. And you want to get these nice and tight because you want to minimize the amount of bouncing that your load does on this cargo carrier, because that will minimize any potential damage to your rear bumper. And that's it for this project. It was another very straightforward project, and I'm really happy with the results. Everything looks great, and everything is secured back here. We now have a ton of extra room in the back of our truck that is way more usable. So I highly recommend that anyone that has a travel trailer or a fifth wheel that it has completely ran out of storage space, and you know, you've got like a generator or bicycles or something like that, you know, get a cargo carrier like this, and then you can make use of your, you know, space behind your travel trailer or fifth wheel for extra storage. But remember, you will have to put bumper support brackets on first, because just really need to reiterate that the bumpers on these are not designed to carry all of this extra weight. This is a lot of extra weight, so you gotta help your bumper out with those supports. And again, there's a link in the video description below to the video that I made. And again, I'll also post all the links to all the stuff that you see here. The electric bikes, the cargo carrier, the mat, the grill covers that I used, as well as the ratchet straps, so that you don't have to hunt around for everything. You know, it's all right there. Oh, and for the bumper supports as well. But that's all for this video. I hope it was helpful for anyone that is looking to install a cargo carrier like this or something else onto the back of their travel trailer or fifth wheel. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and me or someone else will have the answer for you, I'm sure. But see you guys next time. Bye.